This 23rd of June meeting of Te Puna Kōrero open. We're live now. That's great. Thank you. I'm just looking around the room. Yeah, Kylie, you're here. Thank you. So there are no apologies. Do we have? Oh, we. Okay. Well, we'll Mo's for lateness. And Taku, of course. Yeah. Apology from Taku. Item 2 of the agenda is public forum. There are no publics. I'd like to move the apologies be accepted. Yeah, seconded. Yes, by. Who was this? Oh, Councillor Hayward. Sorry. No glasses. Couldn't see you. Item 3, conflict of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone wishes to declare? I will. A potential conflict regarding item 6.1, the Raiha Street speed limit change. This is in light of the fact that my son, Nick Leggett, happens to be Chief Executive of Transport New Zealand, who was one submitter. However, we have advice from Simpson Grierson that as long as I declare that, and the fact that I will be looking at this with as totally unbiased, I'm just raising it as an issue, and I'll leave it at that. If anyone wants to read the detailed advice, they certainly can. So I'll just leave it at that. Oh, okay. And all right, so that moves us to the notification of extraordinary business. There are no items of extraordinary business to be declared. Item 5, which is confirmation of minutes of the Te Puna Kōrero meeting of the 2nd of June. I'll move those minutes to get them onto the table. I have a seconder. From Councillor Ford. Anybody wish to raise any issues? I'm moving them as a true and correct record. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. That moves us to the our main business, item 6.1, or the first of our reports, which is the Raiha Street speed limit change. I'll move this to get it onto the table. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker, thank you very much. Now, we know we have considered this before. This report is reducing the speed limit on Raiha Street from 70 kilometres per hour to 50 kilometres an hour. And we're here to recommend to council that they approve the reduction of that speed limit. Now, I know we have talked about this before, and we can. Are there any issues that councillors wish to raise at this stage before? Yep, certainly. Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, mātua upoko men he kaunihira katoa. My question is regarding point 5. The paragraph talks about the projection of an extra 5,500 vehicles each day as a consequence of the improvements post-TG opening. Can officers please give some commentary as to when that projection was done and whether or not that still is indeed an accurate projection in the current play? Kia ora.
Thank you. Through the chair. That was probably done a year or so ago when it was all pre-COVID. So, and the COVID situation has had a huge effect on traffic volumes. We don't know when it's going to get up to those levels again, or those predicted levels, or whether it ever will. But we are doing monitoring along Kenepuru Drive that'll go through to probably September, October, and then we'll have a check then to see whether or not volumes have stabilised.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes, certainly. Councillor Duncan.
Mine relates to, look, I know the National Speed Limit Register is operated by Waka Kotahi, and this is almost a fait accompli anyway. Actually, it begs the question whether this consultation on these things is a waste of time, in my opinion, because if we're going to be doing this for Titahi Bay Road and for Papakowhai, we're asking people what they think about it. We're getting responses from them, half and half sort of, but they're going to go ahead with it anyway, aren't they? And I just wonder whether we're wasting our time and people's time asking for their opinions. That's just an aside.
You're talking about going forward here, Mike. eh?
Yeah.
We can ask for Ron's comment on that in terms of the changes in the regulations. And your question was, though, about...
Just on page 93, figure 7, it shows the position of 12 of the reported crashes on that road. Now, 4 of those were around the school area of the Seventh-day Adventist school, which would be a 30k area anyway. And I wonder if the timing of those accidents could have been included in that report.
Yeah, through the chair, we've basically, well, we looked at the whole road. We will be looking at the schools in the future, and what we've mainly focused on at the moment is basically serious and fatal crashes, but we will be looking at what we're going to do in that particular area to reduce the risk to students going forward. And that'll be as part of the speed management plan, which will probably come out late this year, early next year.
So, sorry, you had a...
Just one further comment. It was good to see that the ambulance service and fire service had been consulted as well.
So the second part of the question was what's going to change, and will that it won't impact this decision, but the decisions in the future about Titahi Bay Road and Papakowhai Road, how might they be impacted, just as a matter of interest?
Well, if we talk about the National Speed Limit Register, that's just a legal instrument for recording speed limits going forward. We are in discussions at the moment with the Technical Advisory Group, with the TAG, and what we're very keen to do is engage with the community going forward as opposed to consult, and we're working through that now as a region, how we're actually going to do that. But it's basically, National Speed Limit Register is just how we actually record speed limits, and they're available to everyone over the whole country, and that'll be ensuring consistency. We're trying to ensure the process will allow or enable community engagement in the future.
Right, so we will be going through this process again for the other 2 roads which are part of this paper as a technical report.
Yeah. Well, through the chair, what we probably will do is it'll be the 2 roads and every other road within Porirua. But it's an overall plan, in terms of having speed limits. You might have areas which are 30, some may be 50, some may be 60, and then what we're talking about at the moment is we might stage that implementation over 10 years or so, and there could be a number of those. The high priority ones will obviously be outside schools, etc.
Okay, all right. So, I think that'll probably be the responsibility of next council to look at those things in terms of when they come forward, but it could be quite interesting. Mayor Baker, you had a question.
Yeah, sorry, did I hear you correctly say you're going to re-look at that intersection with the school later? We've just done that intersection. Why would you be re-looking at it? You should have done it then.
Through the chair, what we have to do is by, I think at the end of 24, we have to have about 40% of the schools with basically permanent or variable speed limits outside the school frontage. We have to have all of the schools done, I think it's by the end of 27. So that is a separate process to this here. That's actually the speed limits itself.
Through the chair, if you think of Athol Harris's work, we're going to have a commitment to address the schools in Porirua, and so it's not about moving pedestrian crossings for that particular case. It's about anything else that we can do that's effective to help with the safety of children around the schools. So I think we're doing from memory about 14 to begin with, and Athol's got a program where he's got out and engaged with principals, and they've got kids and things like that, and so there's money in place to start doing stuff, but I wouldn't think if we've done something recently with a pedestrian crossing, we wouldn't be moving it. Does that make sense?
It does. I'd like to think that if we're doing other things going forward, we wouldn't be going back over them again. We'd be doing it at the same time. So, yeah, okay, thank you.
You wish to make a further comment?
I'd probably just try and explain. They're actually parallel projects. One's essentially infrastructure, islands, crossings, that kind of thing, raising crossings. And then the other parallel project, which is a little bit behind, will be the speed limits outside schools. And that's with active warning signs.
Yeah, but that's where I'm saying we should tie things in. Why go back and do something twice? So I know that, I know, but that's where we need to talk, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but so today we're going to make the decision about the 50 kilometre an hour.
Yes.
50 kilometre an hour area, which subsequently at the lower end could be reduced to 30 kilometres an hour because it's not exactly outside of school, but at the bottom of the drive anyway. So, yeah. Okay. So, Councillor Waddle, you may.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I noticed New Zealand Police made a submission on this. Will they be increasing frequency of speed checking along there, or will they continue doing what they do currently once the speed limit has changed?
Well, through the chair, we will be contacting the police and we'll be discussing their plans going forward with the change of speed limit. But they are supportive of the change. Yep.
Okay. Are there any other comments that councillors wish to make? If not, I'll put the motion. Or do you have anything else you wish to say, Ron, in terms of this? I think it's clear. We've considered this a couple of times now, and this will go forward to council finally anyway. So I've put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much for that. So that now moves us to item 6.2, which is approval to notify an intensification planning instrument. So I'll move the motion to get it onto the table. Do I have a seconder, please? Yep, Councillor Duncan. Now, I think it would be a good idea if you went through what this is about so that we can have a good understanding of what we're approving today. It's basically a notification process. It's not the final. Yes, go for it.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, that's exactly it. It's the background to this is we have to undertake some change to the proposed district plan to give effect to new legislation that came in December of 21, and that is to increase urban densities. So we've been working at quite a fast pace to meet our statutory deadline, which is we have to notify this by the 20th of August. So there's a process that we need to go through in terms of, and it set out in the report, but there's a special process we have to follow, and there are no appeal rights to it, to the changes we'll be making. What we're seeking now is to get approval for council to actually notify that change before the 20th of August this year to meet our statutory requirements. And what we've done is we've shown we will be going out notification on a set of revised zonings to deliver intensification, and that's across residential zones, but also the commercial zones, city centre, places like that. We have the NPSUD is very directive about what we have to do, so we do have to follow what's in there, and you will have heard it in the media about the 6-storey buildings within walking distance train station. So the process we followed is to map walkable catchment distances and apply a zoning to that. We then have to make some subsequent changes to the actual zoning provisions to allow for taller buildings and this intensification. So what we're seeking now is approval to actually notify those changes to the district plan. That will then start a Schedule 1 process where it's formal submissions, and in line with what we did with the proposed district plan, we'd write to all property owners, social media campaign, etc. People can then make their formal submissions, and that will go forward to the hearings, which will then be considered by the panel that is considering the proposed district plan will be retained to hear these submissions as well. And that will then combine the proposed district plan with this change into one process. And a set of decisions have to be released under the legislation by 20th of August 2023. So hopefully that gives you some idea of the background to this over and above what we've got in the report.
So, councillors, Mayor Baker.
Well, it's not really a question. It's thank you for doing the work.
Yeah.
We're following what government has to do, and there's lots of people out there who are very nervous about high rises coming to something near them, so people will get to have their say. But basically, we're just doing what we have to do. So thank you.
Going through the process. Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Trillon.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It was pretty thorough, right? On page 110, 111, you've got the post-notification timeframes. And item D, further submissions closed. So you'd submissions closed in mid-September, and then further submissions closed early November. I didn't quite understand where that came into it.
Those timelines are in part based on legislative requirements, so we have to allow a certain amount of time for submissions to come in, and we then have to have the time to assess them, analyse them, identify, and then release a summary of submissions, and that can take quite a while. So for the proposed digital plan, I think it took us nearly 3 months to actually assemble all those submissions and identify all the individual points, which we then have to publicly notify. Then people can lodge a further submission in relation to that summary of submissions. It's a little bit complex, but it's something we have to do. There are minimum timelines. We try to, where we can, make them more generous, because we appreciate it's quite complex.
Councillor Trillon.
Yeah, actually, just on the timeframes as well. So just looking through, and in particular interested around the analysis and officer recommendations expected December this year and January next year. So just to clarify, are those recommendations that come back to council is something that the next council will have to address?
No, and I'll just say that timetable is indicative. It has to be worked through a little bit more. No, so what happens is that those recommendations will be what's called a Section 42A report. So if it's me, I have to give evidence to the panel and make a series of recommendations based on my professional judgment, and I'm reporting to the panel on that basis. So those themselves do not come back to the council.
Okay, so it's all just for the panel. So am I right then in thinking that once we make this decision today, that this is out of our hands as a council and it's entirely up to the submissions in the panel?
No, we have to follow a slightly different process with this variation. So the panel under this process can make recommendations to the council. So we will then bring those back to the council. So that will be after all the evidence has been heard. They will make a recommendation. That will then have to come back to the council. If the council accepts those recommendations, those provisions become operative. If the council doesn't accept those recommendations from the panel, it goes to the minister for a final decision. But that's only in relation to this variation. It's a special process.
And those recommendations you're referring to there, are they the ones that are listed at G on page 111 on the recommendations and decisions April to August of next year?
Just let me get to that page.
That's the
Just on page 111 under item 26 on the report.
107 on your report, Mike. So Mike doesn't have diligent, so.
Okay.
it's just the time frames that we're.
Oh, maybe that's not it.
I guess the key point, though, is that this is ultimately something that will be decided by the next council.
Yes, so those the timelines will be into the new council for when those recommendations come back.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's the key thing. Thanks very much.
Councillor Morell, you.
Yeah, just with regard to item recommendation 5, the ongoing engagement with Ngāti Toa, to allow minor changes to the content. So, so any changes that they would like to make would still go out to as part of the consultation program, and will still have council will have the final decision. So what I'm getting at, the input, I welcome the input, but it's a question of the final decision based on what is best for the city. You know, I'm just, and I note that ongoing engagement, have we started that, or in the process of that, or is it delayed?
It's ongoing because we are having to work to quite a tight timeline. We've been working with Ngāti Tara throughout this whole process, and we'll continue to work with them right up to when we can, as far as we can take it in terms of their input and partnership in this process. So it is ongoing and has been ongoing since we started this process after December.
Through you, Chair, can I add to that?
Sure.
So the idea from here, Councillor Morrell, is should the council approve the notification, there's only minor changes that can be made to what's being approved here today. So it can't be anything of substance that would materially change the direction of travel. So that's what the minor is about, and that's the same for officers, yourselves, and iwi. At that point, it goes out to public notification, then there's a two-step process. It goes to the panel, which has the degree of independence around making the recommendations, that then comes back to council, who makes the final decision on this particular variation. Yep.
Can I ask a question then? Given what Mayor Baker has already noted, that this is basically being forced upon us by government, how much say do our ratepayers actually have over the intent of this process?
Through you, Chair, not much.
Right, so we're really going through a process which is all about form, and the actual impact that anyone can have, or any of our ratepayers can have, or any other organisation can have on this is actually minimal, because we are now going to see an intensification process which will allow, up to 6 stories or up to 3 stories all over the city, and 6 stories and above in parts close to public transport hubs, etc. That's correct?
That's correct. So the intent, there's not much room to move. Mike, want to add something after me? There is a little bit of room, I think, around the zone, around the edges, around the boundaries of where it's applied, and like you say, in some of the shape and the conditions around what happens. Mike might want to add.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That there's the scope to come in and talk about, say, the shape of the city in terms of where have we drawn the lines. But in terms of saying, what we can't say is, no, we won't be enabling 6 stories, but it's how and where we enable it, that there is scope for the community and the ratepayers to...
So, for example, let's raise the Porirua Bay, who have... I think, do we have enough ability there to be able to say, because of certain things, that we won't be allowing 6 stories and above? Yeah, but will that be able to... I know we've already indicated that, but this is a change, yeah.
That is what's proposed by the council if you approve this for notification, but it is open to submissions from all parties, and there will be different views expressed on that. But we are certainly confident that we've taken the right approach in saying for Porirua Bay, although it's got a train station, is not appropriate to intensify to that level because of the special circumstances there. But that doesn't mean that's where the story will end. It will be other parties who are very confident will challenge that, but we're confident where we've landed.
Okay, who makes the final decision?
Microphone, Mike. Microphone.
Say again.
Could you repeat it?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So the recommendation from the panel will come back to the council, and the council can then either accept or reject that.
So through the chair, if you are liking, the panel will do the heavy lifting for you. They will do the assessment of whether the special conditions that form the decision in Porirua Bay, for example, hold, and then so they'll make that call, and then they'll bring that back to you. So the team have done a lot of work on Porirua Bay, especially around hazards, and because it doesn't fit the doesn't fit the mould quite the same. So that's where that will play out and come back to you for a final decision.
Right. Councillor Morrell.
Just further to that, sorry, just further to that, then you said we didn't have much say in what's going to happen, so which sounds to me like reinforces why if I was 30 years younger I'd be leaving this country, because it sounds like a dictatorship coming in here. But just saying that. So how do you, where do we go with that?
So through you, Chair, the intent to go higher and more dense, we don't have the ability to challenge that. Like we said, where in terms of the hard lines and where it's not logical for natural hazard reasons or things like that, is where we've got room to move. This is the reality of this variation change, as you say, from the government who have just done a blanket change across the country, and so it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It doesn't have nuance in it. It doesn't have bespoke in it. Let's say that.
Okay. Does anyone else want to make comment or raise a point? Councillor Waddle.
Thank you, Ross. It just concerns me that we're going back out to public submissions or hearings again. We haven't even finished the first round of hearings from the PDP. Will there be support to help the residents of Porirua to make submissions on this IPI?
There will be. We'll be reusing the friend of submitter process, person that we used last time round, who the feedback was very positive. So they'll be available again to assist them as an independent person, and then obviously staff are also available to provide advice in that process when people are thinking about whether to lodge submissions.
Right. Councillor Sayuli.
Thank you. Just sounds like a tick box exercise to me. But just a question regarding the conditions that you talked about. Who sets those? The panel or us?
So the conditions are...
The conditions in terms of where building will be set or so forth?
They are set in the National Policy Statement in terms of it talks about things like walkable catchments to a train station. Where we can influence is what is a walkable catchment, and that's where the community can have their say through submissions about where we've drawn the lines. But it is more or less set for us by the government's policy.
Yeah, and I guess, Councillor Sayuli, it'd be fair to say that, this move by government is based on the understanding that, we don't have enough houses for people in New Zealand, and trying to quicken that process of getting houses built, more intensification, etc. So that's the basis for this going forward now, rightly or wrongly. Sorry, Councillor Trillin.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that I'm just sensing around the table today there's a degree of hesitation, frustration around the way that this process looks, and I just really want to emphasise that I think this is going to be a very good thing for Porirua. It's something that I do strongly support. Is there some nuance that needs to be worked out? Absolutely. I have every faith that the consultation process and the expert panel that we've got will bring some really good recommendations to be able to deal with that. But ultimately, this is coming about because of a major problem we have in a lack of housing. I think it's important to reflect that Porirua right now is the most expensive place in the country to rent. It's an incredibly expensive place to buy a house as well. And that we do have a housing crisis. And does this feel radical? Absolutely, it does. But it's needed and it's necessary. And I think one of the good things about the way in which this is playing out is that we know these are changes that aren't just going to be happening here. They're going to be happening across the Greater Wellington region and across the whole country as well. So it's a big change for everyone. And ultimately, this is going to make housing a lot more affordable for a lot of people. So I think it's important that we remember that context as well. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Trillin. I would take it. I think there is no understanding or guarantee that houses will be cheaper as a result of this. But anyway, nothing that's ever been done in the country before has made housing cheaper, and there's no guarantee going forward. But I understand the sentiment. All right. So, anyone else wish to make a comment or? All right. Or what? Probably not. No. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone. That now brings us to the end of the public part of Te Puna Kōrero. I'll